There was a time when your phone would light up first thing in the morning and you already knew who it was before you even looked. She was the one who reached out. She was the one who said good morning before you even had the chance to think about saying it yourself. And somewhere along the way, quietly, without a fight, without a dramatic scene that stopped happening, let me ask you something. And I want you to really sit with this. When was the last time she texted you first? Not replied, not responded to something you sent 5 hours ago with a one-word answer. I mean, actually reached out because she was thinking about you, because she wanted to share something, because you crossed her mind and she couldn't help herself. If you have to scroll back weeks, maybe even months, to find that moment, that's not a coincidence. That's information. And most people miss it because it doesn't come with a warning label. Here's what nobody tells you about how women process emotional disconnection. It rarely announces itself. There's no big blowout, no dramatic exit. What happens instead is something far quieter and honestly far more dangerous because it's easy to miss if you're not paying attention. She simply stops initiating, stops reaching, stops making the first move because somewhere in her, a decision has already been made. Even if she hasn't said it out loud, maybe even if she hasn't fully admitted it to herself yet, think about it this way. In the beginning, effort isn't something people think about. It's automatic. You don't have to convince yourself to text someone you're falling for. You want to. It feels good. It feels natural. But when that emotional investment fades, effort suddenly becomes a decision instead of an impulse. And when something has to be decided instead of felt, it usually doesn't happen. That's why you're the one carrying every conversation now. That's why the silence stretches a little longer each time. It's not that she's busy. It's not that she forgot. It's that reaching out to you used to require zero energy, and now it requires motivation she doesn't have anymore. And here's the part that really stings if you let it sink in. She's not doing this to punish you. She's not doing it to send you a message, or to test you, or to see if you'll notice. She's doing it because it's happening to her too. Withdrawal like this is rarely a conscious strategy. It's a symptom. It's what happens naturally when the emotional battery that used to fuel every thinking of you text has quietly, slowly drained out. So if you're sitting there right now, phone in hand, realizing that you can't remember the last time she reached out first, don't rush past that feeling. Don't explain it away. Don't tell yourself she's just tired or stressed or going through something. Sometimes that's true. But sometimes the silence is the answer you've been too afraid to ask the question for, because the truth is simple. Even when it's hard to hear, people make time and people make effort for what still matters to them. And when the effort quietly disappears, long before the relationship officially does, that silence is already telling you everything you need to know. There's a moment in every relationship where you learn what makes her come alive. Maybe it was the way her voice would rise a little when she was excited about something, or how quickly she'd get worked up if she thought another woman was flirting with you. Maybe it was the way she'd get quiet and hurt if you forgot something important to her. Whatever it looked like for you, there was a version of her that felt everything deeply because you mattered enough to provoke a reaction. Now think about the last few weeks. Has that version of her gone missing? This is the part people get wrong over and over again. They think the real danger sign in a relationship is fighting, yelling, tears, jealousy. And sure, those things aren't pleasant. Nobody enjoys conflict. But conflict, as uncomfortable as it feels, is proof of investment. You don't fight for something you've already let go of. You don't get jealous over someone you've stopped caring about. Anger, tears, even irritation, underneath all of it is a simple message. This still matters to me. What should actually worry you isn't the storm. It's the stillness that comes after it when the storm simply never comes back. If you tell her something that used to set her off and she just shrugs. If you come home late and instead of a hurt question, you get silence. Not peaceful silence, but empty silence. If you mention someone she used to be a little insecure about, and there's nothing there anymore, no flicker, no reaction, that's not maturity. That's not her finally trusting you. More often than not, that's detachment wearing the costume of calm. Here's the psychology behind it, and it's important you understand this part. Emotional reactions require emotional investment. To feel hurt, jealous, disappointed, even angry, a part of her has to still be emotionally tied to the outcome. She has to care about what you do, what you say, who you are to her, for any of it to sting. So when all of that fades into flat indifference, it's not because she's become more secure or more patient. It's because she's stopped needing an outcome from you at all. And when someone stops needing an outcome from you, they've usually already started building a life that doesn't depend on one. This is why apathy is so much more telling than anger will ever be. Anger says, I'm still fighting for this. Apathy says, I already left, I just haven't told you yet. And the tricky part is, apathy is quiet. It doesn't demand your attention the way conflict does. It lets you believe things are fine, even peaceful, when really, the emotional wiring that used to connect the two of you has slowly gone cold. So if you've noticed that the woman who used to feel everything around you now seems to feel almost nothing, don't mistake that for growth, and don't mistake it for peace. Pay attention to what's missing, not just to what's calm. Because in matters of the heart, indifference has never once meant that everything is fine. It has only ever meant that something, somewhere, has already ended. There was a time when she told you everything. The annoying coworker who wouldn't stop talking during meetings. The weird dream she had last night that made no sense, but she needed to describe anyway. The little victory at work that nobody else would care about, but you did because it was hers, and that made it matter. You knew the small details of her days, not because you asked for a report, but because she wanted you to know. Sharing her life with you wasn't an effort. It was instinct. So ask yourself honestly, when's the last time she told you something just because she wanted to, not because you asked? This is one of those signs that's easy to miss because it doesn't disappear all at once. It fades. First, the small stories stop. Then the updates about her day get shorter, fine, busy, nothing much. Answers that close a conversation instead of opening one. Eventually, what's left is just logistics. What time dinner is, who's picking up groceries, whether the bill got paid. You're still talking, technically, but you're not really being let in anymore. You've gone from being her confidant to being her roommate with extra steps. Here's what's actually happening underneath that shift. And it matters. Sharing your inner world with someone is an act of trust and closeness. You let them in because you want them there, because their reaction to your day still feels important to you. When someone stops doing that, it's rarely because they suddenly became more private people. It's because somewhere along the way, they stopped believing you were still the person they wanted processing their life with them. And that's the part that should really make you pause. Because the need to share doesn't disappear, it just goes somewhere else. Maybe it's a friend now, maybe it's a sibling, a coworker, a group chat you don't know exists. The details of her day, her wins, her frustrations, her random 2 a.m. thoughts, they're still being told to someone, just not to you anymore. And that quiet redirection is one of the clearest signs that emotional intimacy has already started slipping away long before anyone says a word about it. It's easy to convince yourself this is normal, that people get busy, that not every day needs a play-by-play, that maybe you're overthinking a few short replies. And sometimes, sure, that's all it is. But when it becomes a pattern, when the conversations you do have feel more like scheduling meetings than moments between two people who care about each other, that pattern is telling you something you can't afford to ignore. Because closeness isn't built on the big conversations alone. It's built on all those small, unnecessary ones, the ones that don't need to happen, but happen anyway, because two people want to stay woven into each other's daily lives. When those small moments disappear, what's left isn't peace. It's distance, dressed up as routine. So if she stopped telling you the small things, don't wait for the big things to disappear too. By the time that happens, the space between you will already be impossible to ignore. There's a difference between being touched and being held, even when the motion looks exactly the same from the outside. A hug can last 5 seconds and feel like coming home. Or it can last 5 seconds and feel like nothing at all. Arms in the right place, but nobody really there. If you've started to notice that difference with her, your body probably knew before your mind was willing to admit it. Think back to how things used to feel. Maybe she used to reach for your hand without even thinking about it. While walking, while watching a movie, while sitting in traffic saying nothing at all. Maybe she used to lean into you Rest her head on your shoulder, find little excuses to be close. That kind of affection isn't something people plan. It's something that happens naturally when closeness is real, when being near you still feels like something she wants, not something she's simply allowing. Now, pay attention to what's happening now. Is the affection still there, but different? Does it feel like it's happening on autopilot? A kiss goodbye that lands somewhere near your cheek out of habit? A hand that's held but not really holding on? A hug that ends a second too early? That shift is subtle, but if you've felt it, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the difference between affection that's chosen and affection that's simply performed. Here's why this matters more than people realize. Physical closeness has always been an extension of emotional closeness, not the other way around. People don't naturally want to be physically close to someone they feel distant from. So when the desire behind the touch fades, but the touch itself continues out of habit or obligation, what you're left with is the shape of intimacy without the substance of it. And most people can feel that difference, even if they can't quite explain it. It's why a hug can leave you feeling more alone than not being touched at all. This is also one of the hardest signs to accept, because on the surface, everything still looks fine. She's not pulling away completely. She's not refusing to be near you. So it's easy to tell yourself nothing's wrong. After all, you're still together, still touching, still going through the motions of a couple. But going through the motions is exactly the problem. Affection that used to come from wanting to be close to you has quietly turned into affection that comes from not wanting to cause a scene by pulling away entirely. And this is the part that stings the most if you let yourself really feel it. Mechanical affection isn't cruelty. It's not manipulation. It's often just what's left when the emotional connection driving physical closeness has already faded, but the relationship hasn't officially ended yet. She's still there, technically, but part of her already isn't. So if her touch has started to feel more like routine than warmth, don't ignore what your body is telling you, even while your mind tries to explain it away. Because affection was never meant to feel like something owed. And when it starts to, that's rarely the beginning of a problem. It's usually the middle of one that's already been happening for a while. There's a certain kind of comfort in being someone's first thought. Not their only thought, just the first one. The person they call when something good happens, before they've even processed it fully. The person they text when something's wrong, because somehow reaching for you is the most natural response their mind knows how to give. Being someone's first call isn't about grand gestures. It's about instinct, about being wired into someone's life closely enough that you're the automatic reflex when something happens. So here's a question worth sitting with. When something good happens to her now, when something exciting or stressful or important occurs, are you still the first person she reaches for? Or have you noticed that you're finding out about things later, secondhand, almost as an afterthought? This shift doesn't usually happen with any announcement. It happens quietly in the small reordering of who gets told what and when. Maybe her sister hears about the promotion first. Maybe a friend gets the play-by-play of a rough day at work, and you get the summary, if you get anything at all. Maybe plans get made with other people first, and you're slotted in afterward if there's room. None of this looks dramatic from the outside. It just looks like life getting busy, priorities shifting, other people mattering too. And to be fair, that's normal to some degree. No one should be someone's entire world. But there's a difference between healthy balance and quiet demotion. And if you pay close attention, you'll usually be able to tell which one you're actually looking at. Because when someone still deeply values their place with you, even a busy, complicated life tends to bend a little to make room for you. You still get told first, even if it's a rushed voice message on the way to something else. You still get chosen, even when there are other options. What changes when the emotional priority shifts isn't just the amount of time she spends with you, it's the instinct behind who she turns to first, without even thinking about it. This is the part that's easy to miss, because it doesn't feel like rejection in the moment. It feels like small inconveniences. A missed update here, a last-minute invite there, a conversation you had to ask about instead of being told. But add all those moments up, over weeks, over months, and a pattern starts to form, one where you've slowly moved from being central in her life to being peripheral in it. And peripheral is a lonely place to stand in a relationship that used to feel like the center of everything. Here's the honest truth about priority. It's rarely stated out loud, and it doesn't need to be. It shows up in the small, unconscious choices people make every single day about who they call, who they tell, who they think of first. Those choices are hard to fake and even harder to hide if you're paying attention. So if you've started to feel like you've quietly slipped down the list, don't dismiss that feeling as insecurity. Pay attention to where you actually stand, not where you used to stand, and not where you assume you still do. Because being loved has never looked like being an afterthought. It has always looked like being chosen first. Here's something that surprises most people when they finally hear it. By the time she says the words, "it's over," she's usually not making a decision in that moment. She's announcing one she already made a while ago. The breakup isn't the ending. It's the paperwork. The real ending already happened quietly somewhere in the weeks or months before, while everything on the surface still looked like a relationship. This is the hardest part of all of this to accept, because it means the goodbye you're bracing for, or maybe the one you've already gone through, wasn't really sudden at all. It just felt sudden to you because you were still living in the relationship while she had already started grieving it and moving past it internally. That gap between when someone emotionally leaves and when they physically say so is one of the most painful, most misunderstood parts of watching love fade. Think about everything we've talked about. The texts that stopped coming first, the reactions that went flat instead of passionate, the stories she stopped telling you, the affection that started feeling like routine, the way you slowly slid down her list of priorities. None of those things happen the week before someone leaves. They happen slowly over time as someone processes a decision they haven't said out loud yet. Sometimes because they're scared, sometimes because they're still hoping something will change, and sometimes because they've genuinely worked through the ending privately before ever speaking about it publicly. This is why so many people feel blindsided by a breakup that, in hindsight, was never really sudden. They look back afterward and realize all the signs were there, all the quiet withdrawals were there. They just didn't want to read them as an ending, because it's so much easier to explain away one missed text, one quiet night, one distracted conversation, than it is to face the pattern all of them make together. Here's what's important to understand about this. None of this makes her cruel, or calculated, or dishonest. Processing an ending internally before announcing it is deeply human. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to leave without any warning, even if it feels that way to the person left behind. What actually happens is a slow unraveling, an emotional exit that starts long before the physical one does. By the time the words are spoken, she's already said goodbye in 100 smaller ways you may not have fully recognized until you look back at all of them together. So if any of this has felt uncomfortably familiar, if you've noticed pieces of yourself in these signs, one after another, this isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you up before the ending becomes official, while there's still a chance to understand what's actually happening instead of hoping it isn't. Awareness is the only thing that gives you the choice to act, to ask real questions, to have honest conversations, instead of being caught off guard by something that was quietly building the whole time, because love doesn't usually disappear in a single moment. It fades in silence, one missed text, one flat reaction, one untold story at a time, until one day, the person standing in front of you has already left, long before they ever said goodbye.